Hi, everyone. Welcome to Talk Math with Your Friends. This is the kind of place where we unmute to groan at terrible jokes. We really mean talk math with your friends. So I'm going to leave my camera on and as much as possible my mic on so that our guests, presenters, can get some auditory feedback. If you're able and that's appropriate in your context, please do, so that it doesn't feel like you're like shouting to the void. Instead, they're having a conversation with people here. And I think they're going to ask us to participate at some point in this discussion. So hopefully we'll be ready for that. So that's sort of our starting admin. Now let's do some brief introductions. Super excited about today's presentation. We've not with us today is Ashli-Ann Douglas, who I believe is an educational psychology graduate student. And then here today is Mariah Harmon, who is a teaching and learning graduate student, both of them at Vanderbilt, and Dr. Nicole M. Joseph, who is an associate professor of mathematics education in the Department of Teaching and Learning at the Peabody School of Education at Vanderbilt. Her research explores two lines of inquiry: A, Black women and girls, their identity development and their experiences in mathematics, and B, whiteness, white supremacy, and how it operates and shapes underrepresentation of Black women and girls in mathematics. And just to sort of add a little personal flair, Dr. Joseph has been so wonderful. I mean, she's very warm and caring and is sort of supportive and interactive with a bunch of my communications and things like that. And I really love her book that she co-edited called Interrogating, Whiteness, and Relinquishing Power. I think it's white faculty's commitment to racial consciousness in STEM. Highly recommend it. And I really love reading her paper about normalizing Black girls' humanity in math class with my future teachers. It's been one of the most powerful tools in getting them to let go of a color-averse perspective on the role of teacher and move towards something that actually attends consciously to the humanity of their students, and especially ones who are not often included in math classes when we don't do that. So I'm really honored to have our speakers, Mariah and Dr. Nicole Joseph today. And so please, everyone, join me in welcoming our speakers for this excellent session.
Thank you, Brian. Y'all, he's the business. I just appreciate all the support over the years. The support that Brian has provided for me. So I'm a pedagogue, and so I just quickly need folks to tell me their name. I like to know who's in the room. So either you can put it in the chat if you don't want to talk out loud, or you can unmute yourself and just tell me who you are and where you're from. That would be awesome. Okay, go ahead and go. I see Kate. She got loud kids in the crib. That's all right, Kate. Brittany, I know Brittany's at Rutgers. Thank you, Brittany, for being here. Oh, Dr. Howard is here.
Oh, I'm Andrew, and this is my dog.
Hi, Andrew. Hi, doggy. Oh, Daryl is here. Thank you, Daryl, for coming. And Carrie from Clemson. TN. MSUB at the moment, but that'll change in the fall. Ooh, somebody got a new job. Congratulations. I don't know if the secret's out. Lauren, thank you for being here. Liz, thank you from Central Oklahoma. Awesome. All right, so thank you for doing that. I always like to know who's in the room. So let me tell you about this project. So this is a longitudinal study that Dr. Bethany Riddle-Johnson, Dale Farron, Kelly Durkin, these are scholars at Vanderbilt and Peabody College, who wrote a grant, my God, I think almost 15 years ago, to study like math achievement of low-income students in the Nashville area, Nashville and greater area. And so let me just say right off now, the girls that we are going to be talking about have been in this study since they were in kindergarten, actually pre-K. So now they are juniors and sophomores. So they have been like doing follow-ups every single year with these students. And so about 2-3 years ago, they invited me to be on the advisory board. And I was like, now, y'all sure you want me to be on the advisory board? Because, I'm not coming to play no games. And they were like, absolutely. So I was given an opportunity to change some of the questions on the protocol that they use to conduct the focus groups. And they were also open to allow me to, well, not me, but to allow all Black girl focus groups. This is something that they had not done in the previous years. So this is how we got this data of just all Black girls, was because there was an opportunity. So when we changed the protocol, I don't remember all the questions, but actually it's in the paper. Hopefully that will be out by the end of the year. But one of the questions was like, when was the last time you enjoyed math? Like we want to know, like, what were you learning? Because we're trying to find and understand, like, the joy, if there is any joy that Black girls have found in mathematics in some type of way, right? And so I just want to say right off that we did not ask questions specifically about race, specifically about gender. And a lot of that was because of, some of the limitations that, that I had. And I wasn't the one that was going to do the focus groups. We wanted, or they wanted, to keep the integrity of the research folks that had been trained, that had relationships with the kids for all of these years. And so, I had to, even though I was able to get all Black girls, so it was like a give and take type of situation. And so I just kind of wanted to just put that out there right up front, so that, you guys know a little bit more about the context of this study. But it did include 48 Black girls that were in low, not low, but like regular math classrooms. And we had some girls that were also in what they called honors classrooms. So what we learned at the end of the day was that the girls talked about these worksheets and was just like, wow, is there anything else to math besides the worksheets? And this is why we chose to title it as we did. Okay, let's see if this thing will, oops, where y'all go? All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Mariah, and she's going to take us to the next part of the presentation.
So first off, I want to say thank you all for having us and to be able to share this space with you all. I'm so appreciative of this opportunity. So to open it up, I want you all to take a second. We're going to take a long pause. And I want you to think back to your experience in your high school math classroom. What is one memory that comes back to you the most immediately? And you can come off mute, you can put it in the chat. What's a memorable moment from your high school math career?
I remember proving my first theorem.
Okay, proving first theorem. Awesome. Who else? What else can we remember from our math classrooms in high school?
I remember someone finding out that I beat them on a math test and so wanting to tackle me in gym class later on because we were in the same gym class.
Oh wow, someone wanted to tackle you because you scored higher on the test?
Yep.
Wow.
I have another grade story. One of my teachers she would always put up a stem and leaf diagram of the exam scores on the day that she gave them back. And so like the moment anybody saw the top scorer show up, like everybody was guessing that it was me.
Wow. What else? Thank you for these. We have some in the chat. Learning about irrationals, being so nervous to present math stuff in front of the class, programming in a borrowed TI-83 between classes, getting into an argument with my trig teacher because we disagreed on something, calc teaching, I'm guessing it's calc teacher handing back tests in reverse grade order, my principal giving us a science teacher for algebra 2, so we didn't learn anything. I had to take an extra course after school. I remember teachers not calling on me. I knew I had the right answer though. I know that's right. Joy of solving integrals, but in hindsight, I didn't really know what I was solving. I was just following an algorithm. Also playing games in my TI-83 instead of paying attention. Y'all are blowing up the chat. I love this.
In 8th grade, my algebra teacher got mad. I mean, he kicked me out of the class. He was really mad. He was a basketball coach, so he had that, like, you know, coach personality. Because other kids were coming over to ask me for help, and I was like, "Y'all go sit down." But they didn't listen to me, and they kept asking me for help. And so, of course, I was the one who got kicked out because I didn't respect his authority.
Oof. This is a perfect segue into kind of some of the issues that are coming up, especially in our data. And thank you all for sharing also your experiences in the chat. So it's interesting because there's so many of us shared our experiences, but there weren't too many positive experiences of loving my teacher, loving what we were doing, this communal experience in your math classes. And so something that we did in looking at this data from these Black girls is really digging into their experiences, especially with their teachers and in their high school math classrooms, and how that changed from their elementary and middle school experiences, which were often really, really positive and exciting for them, to this change in high school that was very competitive, that was teachers not listening or not calling on them. And so to illuminate and kind of bring to light their voices, we have a couple of quotes to get us started. Here is a quote from Selena, and she says, "I really don't have anything that I enjoy about my math class because I really don't understand. I feel like the way he explains the problem, I just don't understand. If he explained it in a different way, then I probably could understand. And I'm scared to ask for help because if I asked for help, when I did ask for help, he just looked and walked away, shaking his head. I'm steady asking questions and he's telling me that I'm right. But when I go over the problems on the board, he's telling me I'm wrong and I don't get it." Ooh, next slide, please. And similarly from Nia, she says, middle school, elementary school, they make sure everybody get it. Now they don't care if you get it. It's just you've got to ask questions, but they really don't answer. Like my teacher, I ask a question. He's like, "Look at the board." I'm like, "Okay." And so this kind of illuminates a little bit about what we were seeing, especially among the Black girls in the study, and what they talk about of being ignored by their teachers when they do ask questions, even if they are scared to. They're told they should already know this. They're not getting their answers, their questions answered. And they're not feeling as though their teachers are really investing the time to make sure that they're learning and being pushed forward in their mathematics. Next slide, please. So before we jump into kind of what we found and more about the paper that we wrote from this study, we want to talk about our positionality as Black women researchers, and specifically Black girl cartographers, and the fact that we care deeply about the health, the well-being, the development, the interest of Black girls, and specifically about Black girls and women, and thinking about their mathematics development, their mathematics identities. And that is something that we have centered not only in our work, but in the Joseph Mathematics Education Lab, as pictured here, that we just have a lot of joy in this space. But not only is it joy in this space, we are doing the work, and we are doing this work as a way to bring the voices of Black girls forward, because it's so important, especially in thinking about math instruction. And we each of the authors of this paper had very unique relationships in math instruction and learning in P16. For instance, I went to independent, predominantly white high school, where my entire math instruction was around competition. It was around thinking about math in a very Eurocentric way. being pushed out of classes because you didn't have the prerequisites, or even if I did have them, it was still thought, okay, she might not be able to do XYZ, and really feeling like math wasn't for me. I don't know, Dr. Joseph, you want to jump in with your
Yeah, and then someone like me, I have always loved math, and I didn't really care, what folks were doing. You weren't gonna like stop me, but I didn't love math because, I just wanted to sit around and think about, the abstractness of math. I just saw very early the power of using it as a tool to help me understand things that were happening in my life. And I did go all the way through calculus and statistics in high school, minored in mathematics, did all the classes in undergraduate, and then became a math teacher. So I have always taught kids that look like me, and I've always been able to make connections and build strong relationships with students to help them find some level of joy and some level of like connection with math, right? That's not to say that they passed all those state tests, because guess what? They did not. But I believed in journaling, writing about math, not just writing about use words, numbers, and pictures to explain your thinking, but we wrote about how we felt in math. So there was a lot of journaling in my classroom, and they also had portfolios, and they did their own student-led conferences. So I trained them and taught them using the little corny standards that we had in the state of Washington, how to talk to their parents about what is it that you actually know about this state standard, and what do you still need support with? And this was before my PhD, y'all, okay? So I always have to tell people this. This was before I knew all the fancy words, culturally responsive instruction. No, I didn't know that stuff. I just knew that what was, my curriculum, what I was given, I couldn't just teach it as is. I had to bring some soul. I had to bring different types of experiences to help my kids. And I actually brought my students into the problem-solving process, because I had no time to guess about how you wanted to learn, right? And again, I can't tell you how I knew these things. They were just in my gut. So my positionality when I'm doing this research, when I'm doing this work, I have a sense of urgency. I have a sense of sort of like no excuses. Many of my kids were homeless. One of my best and brightest math students was homeless, but I had the same high expectations for her, differentiated the learning, let her do the homework in class, at school, because I knew she didn't have anywhere to do it at home. And so this is why I have the position that I have, that, these teachers, you can't tell me that Black children can't learn math. I'm never going to believe it. And so I like to say, put my positionality, my biases, my sense of urgency right in the paper, so folks will know. You better believe the way we designed this study, the research questions, the coding, all of that was shaped by our positionalities and our experiences as math students, as Black women, Black girls learning math. And so I would encourage all of you, as you're thinking about, your research around math or whatever, it's important to let people know like who you are and why you do the work that you do. So here's a research questions that we did. How do the mathematics experiences of 10th and 11th grade Black girls, as framed through Black Feminist Math Pedagogies, expose ideology systems and other institutional inequalities that are getting in the way of these Black girls learning? And then what can we learn also about their math identities? This is the framework that we used. So anytime you are working with Black girls or Black women, I think it's important to use critical frameworks. And so one of the frameworks that we use will actually, sort of those three, if you will, Black girlhood and intersectionality. So y'all know that intersectionality is just a tool to help you make things that look sort of like normal for the naked eye. Intersectionality helps you to elevate that stuff and to make it bear weight, right? So something just like a teacher walking away from a student or whatever, like that just seems normal, but intersectionality gives us the tools to say, well, no, when you situate that into larger contexts around how Black girls have been racialized, gendered in society, in schools, then there's weight and there should be a level of distinction in terms of how they are experiencing these math classes. Black girlhood is also important. I've been reading a lot about Black girlhood, and what I learned was that when we are using like Black feminist epistemologies, that is actually adultifying Black girls. And it is because Black feminist epistemologies was normed, if you will, on adult Black women. And so it doesn't bring in the developmental piece about young people and teenagers or whatever. And so Black girlhood, it was recommended that Black girlhood be used. And Black girlhood is really this very sort of, they say undisciplined, but what they mean by that is that it doesn't flow through one discipline, that it is super interdisciplinary and trying to unpack what does it mean to be a Black girl in society. And the way that Ruth Nicole Brown is just one of the scholars, she talks about it, it's a space of like a celebration, a space of affirmation, a space of voice, that we should be theorizing using Black girls' experiences to help us understand who they are. And so we put that together with my framework that I have developed over the years, which is Black Feminist Math Pedagogies. And essentially, I was trying to put together a framework that would help unpack or help us understand things that I had been seeing in some of my other studies. And I'll start with academic and social integration. Black girls talk about, why does math have to be so strict and quiet and you got to be looking straight, like you can't have a conversation. Why does it have to be that way? And you saw some of that probably, Brian, in the Harvard paper. They were like, look, we want to crack a joke every now and then. I have video footage of them like singing about the slope of a line. And they happened to have had a teacher that wasn't tripping over that kind of stuff because why? They were still focused in learning on math. But I'm finding that academic and social integration is something that some of my work is showing that Black girls need. It's like they want to be social, more relaxed atmosphere. And what's wrong with having a relaxed atmosphere as you're learning about whatever, limit theorem, whatever? Why does it have to be so deep and serious? You know why? Because those are characteristics that are a part of white supremacy culture. And we know who has developed, mathematics. And then this idea of critical consciousness and reclamation is really a way to think about who am I in this space? I think there's some aspects of social justice, teaching social justice for mathematics, so sort of Gutstein, sort of like we can use this math to solve social justice issues that we care about. But I'm not even really going way over there. I'm like, teach Black girls like at the meta level, helping them to understand like what is important about the mathematics and how is it relevant to you, right? So awaken their senses to flourish, like Frances Sue's book, talks about, like how can we create experiences where people can flourish in math and learning math. And so I'm thinking about it in the context of young girls, learning mathematics. Ambitious math teaching, I tell people all the time, Black girls need more math, not less. And the type of math that they need is ambitious instruction. So we talking about basically some of you probably know the standards for mathematical practice and Common Core. You know, some people hate Common Core, whatever. I don't love it either. But this idea of modeling, like that's a high level practice that will take you from kindergarten to a PhD in mathematics, like processes of modeling, processes of argumentation, processes of problem solving, perseverance. They don't get these experiences, at least these girls in this study did not get those types of experiences, right? And then a robust math identity is kind of built off my colleague, Ebony McGee, who termed robust math identities, where she was looking at, college level students and talking about how they had robust math identities when they understood the shit around them, but still was able to like be successful. They understood the racialized, gendered spaces, but still found ways to be successful. And so this sort of can, connect with critical consciousness. How do we help them to understand that, you know what, this system really wasn't set up, for you to be successful. So we're going to go to the meta level and I'm going to help you understand this as to why I need you to take 4 or 5 years of mathematics, for example, right? And the other thing that I want to say is that I love my colleagues, Danny Martin, Rochelle Gutierrez. Those are colleagues that are saying, tear all this shit down, tear it down and let's start over. I think the teacher in me, because the other thing that I did was I served as an instructional math coach. So I worked with teachers one-on-one to help them think about, equity issues in teaching mathematics, right? So I tell people straight up, my work is situated inside of a broken system. I want to tear everything down, but what I know is that ain't gonna happen tomorrow. And me and Luis talk about this all the time. What about Monday? Kids are gonna show up on Monday. So what can I do to support teachers? What can I do to help Black girls understand this system, to give them a better opportunity to be able to be successful? And for me, success is not grades. For me, success is persistence, asking questions, pushing boundaries, problem posing your own ideas, right? That is questioning the text, questioning, the teachers, being able to find some level of joy in math. To me, that's success, whether you're earning a C or, whatever. So that's sort of the lens through which we try to better understand these, the data. So I'm gonna let Mariah jump in and give us a little bit about some of the findings here for this first research question.
Awesome. So again, our first research question is, how do the mathematics experiences of 10th and 11th grade Black girls, as framed through the Black Feminist Mathematics Pedagogies framework, expose ideologies, systems, and other institutional inequalities that serve as barriers to their learning? And so one of the major findings was that their math teachers lacked care or competence in care towards Black girls. And so we see that in the Black FMP. It contends that teachers who do not take the time to learn about the realities of Black girls, socio-historical and contemporary contexts, and provide ambitious math instruction will also likely not be a change agent to challenge implicit, racialized, and gendered messages about who belongs in mathematics classrooms. And so this is important in understanding why this lack of care is something that we must think about for Black girls and experiences in math classrooms, because that ultimately pushes them away from wanting to do math, seeing its value in their everyday lives, and seeing their value in maybe extending, from one math class into majoring in it, going into a STEM-focused profession after they've graduated. And so the Black girls in this study reported things of, I'm asking my teacher questions and they're simply not answering. They will only talk to half of the classroom, or if people in the classroom are talking, they're not trying to make sure everyone gets the content. They just simply kind of throw you away. They also talked about from moving from elementary and middle school, where they had joy in their classrooms, they were doing these hands-on activities, to when they get to high school, they're just being given math worksheets. They may not even have a math teacher in the classroom with them. It's someone from another content area, or feeling as though they're not getting these connections to their everyday lives. The teachers just simply do not care about their success in the classroom. And so this is important because it's often reflected in the type of instruction that often is a mirror from the stereotypes that teachers may hold about Black girls and Black women, and how that looks like and how that shows up in their instruction.
And so we wanted to learn a little bit more about how those experiences shape their math identity. So this is like something that I study. So previous research, both quantitative and qualitative research, suggests that math identity is made up of things such as interest, competence and performance, recognition, and folks like Danny, have said that math identities are shaped in a racialized type of experience, as his work has shown. Many of those parents that he spoke to early in his early work, they talked about how, they felt like their teachers were racist and always demeaned, if you will, their math abilities and things like that. And then we know just in society that whether you Black, white, zebra, whatever, if you're a girl, you don't do math, like you're not competent in mathematics. So this is what makes Black girls very unique, because they are sitting at that intersection of both being Black and being a girl. So they're super vulnerable. I've used the language of an exponential stereotype, in the sense that it's like all of those things sort of coming, together, those different social identities. And so clearly, if you are in math classes that are, where only thing you're seeing are worksheets, and, we asked them, then they talked about like, how do you use math? Y'all want to guess what they talked about in real life? When we're like, how do you use math in real life? Or how do you see what you're learning in your current math classes that can help you in your real life?
Finance? Personal finance?
Yeah, basically money, and I'm like, oh, damn. I'm like, there's just so much more than that. But that's the level that they understand, because no one is helping them to sort of unpack the mathematics that they are learning to help them see what's relevant beyond something like personal finance, right? So I think it's kind of hard to develop an interest in math if there's no emotional connection to it, if there's no, you don't see a reason, there's no utility, you're not recognized, as a quote unquote math person. And then this idea of being competent. Well, we have all been socially constructed that to be competent in math means that you raise your hand first. You know the answer. You ain't got to think. You don't have to write nothing down. You're getting A's on the test. So we've constructed competence in such narrow ways that, when Black girls, they've also internalized this, right? So when they think about competence, they talk about the same stuff, like, you have to get good grades, or you're answering the questions first. I mean, just ridiculous shit. That's not even how a practicing mathematician operates. But that's the type of ways that we teach, I think, a lot of times in high schools and urban high schools. Go down a little bit further, urban high schools that have a lot of Black children in them, right? Because we also know that the math teachers that those kids are getting, they're not prepared. They don't know how to teach, children. Sometimes they don't even have the competencies in math. Danny done called that into question about like using sort of these things as proxies around like, what does it really mean to be a competent individual, a competent teacher to teach mathematics to African-American kids. And these experiences that they shared with us also showed that they're never recognized, or they're very seldom recognized as someone with an ability, to do mathematics. And so, these are the types of experiences that I think a lot of Black girls are seeing. And it's so interesting because other work that I've done, they see the importance of math. Actually, these girls did too. They see the importance of math. They know that, they're going to need it in their lives. Black girls have sort of highest aspirations of maybe majoring in a major that uses math, but the translation and the realization of taking that seldom gets manifested because of all of the structural things that are happening in schools and the stereotypes and the low expectations, all of those sort of inequality issues that are happening in schools really get in the way of Black girls really having limitless possibilities in mathematics. And so some of those implications are, we need to do more research in understanding Black girls' identities and experiences in mathematics. One of the research projects I want to do at some point is I just want to listen to Black girls talk about math. Like, I don't want to be in there. I just want to, I don't want to be like in the conversation. I just want to be on the side and just listen to what are they talking about, but we need to elevate their voices because as Black girlhood would suggest, that's how we're going to theorize what their experiences are like. Affirming Black girls' math identities, including providing opportunities to be recognized as capable in math is really important. And having equitable and ambitious math instruction for Black girls is imperative, as worksheets appear to be the normalized type of math instruction that they are getting. So we need to, get rid of that. And again, when I think about the broken system, I always say to myself, damn, if we could just work on more ambitious instruction for Black girls. I'm not saying that that's going to solve the problem, but that would be one little tiny step that I think would get to more educational equity, in the sense that they are getting a more robust type of experience of what it means, to learn math. Math is way beyond just arithmetic and calculations. It's logic, it's a type of thinking, it's spatial sense, it's like, other things. And so, and then I love projects in math. So Black girls just need these more robust types of experiences, in these spaces. And then when they do get those types of experiences and they're demonstrating, we need everybody to protect them, because y'all know what happened with the Black girls in the NASA project. Those girls developed a filtration system for their high school because the water was whack and it was nasty and, could hurt them. So they developed their own water filtration system and were a finalist in that NASA competition. But what happened when the voting was public, they had all kind of racialized, people saying, you don't know what you're doing, don't vote for them. These Black girls are stupid, just ridiculous. And so what happened was, of course, NASA had to close the voting. And then, they didn't win. I think they placed in like the top 4 or something like that. Don't quote me, but I know they got some type of recognition. And then, of course, Americans, we came up and I think they got some scholarships and things like that from like crowdsourcing. But the issue is that it's like, damn if we do and damn if we don't. So even when you have Black women and girls that are shining in these areas, the ideologies, the structures, the systems still press upon them in ways that try to limit, block, eclipse, whatever word you want to use, their success, their shine, their genius, right? So those are some of the issues that we saw, and we would love to now, we got 15 minutes, well, more than 15 minutes to have questions, conversations. This is where the good stuff starts. Thank y'all for listening.
Thank you.
Oh, hi, Carrie. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. I was really glad to have you presenting today.
Thank you. So what y'all think? What we gonna talk about? Because I know y'all got thoughts, questions.
Mostly the chat has been making connections to what you've been saying, rather than asking questions. But there was one about representation in the teacher force. So I'd be curious to hear about the teachers at the school. I assume from your data that there's not a lot of Black women teaching math at the school, but be curious about that, and yeah, and hearing more about
We did not have
teacher
a
identity.
way. We did not have a way to know who the race of the teachers. Like that wasn't a question that was, asked, at least in the protocol. But what we do know is that there's like basically zero high school Black teachers in Nashville. And all of these kids came from schools that are in the Nashville area. Like, y'all ain't supposed to know that, right? But I know you won't tell nobody. You might have to block that out of the recording.
Okay. I had an experience, I taught high school for 1 year, and on the first day I gave a little survey to the students, and they told me a little about their background, and every single girl of color at the school told me that she didn't feel safe talking in math class at that school. And obviously an immediate challenge to action. I talked to some of the other math teachers who were very caring people, but this had happened, and some of the other people around campus, and I was like, yeah, I'm like, but how can that be the answer? Yeah. And I don't know if you had thoughts about what an individual teacher can do in that kind of context, that would certainly be welcome.
I'll see if Mariah wants to say anything first.
That question is so interesting to me, because I think when we look at the data and look at what the girls are telling us, it seems like it's just these easy things to do by creating this environment where care is the norm. I think by the time you got to senior year, you've been through years of math teachers ignoring you, pushing you out, other classmates doing that, and no protection or no care from the teacher. So I think one, if you get them by senior year, it's a lot to undo so much of that trauma that has happened in those classrooms. But this idea of trying to build a classroom that is inclusive. So again, it's not just the sit and get math, it's not just the worksheets math, but really valuing those voices, valuing conversation, being able to talk about math, write about math, engage with math that's authentic to the Black girls, authentic to people in the classroom. When they have a question, answer it. These things don't seem like they are so crazy, but that is what, the data was showing us. This is what these girls were reporting about their experiences in their classrooms, of that I simply could not get an answer from my teacher. I simply couldn't, or I would ask, and they maybe, they talked about maybe the teacher didn't know the answer or didn't feel like they had math content. or they would get upset when I'd ask a question because it was taken as disrespectful. It was taken as, and so I think some of these things are not necessarily revolutionary, but when their foundation is in these racialized and gendered stereotypes, they become so much more poignant for Black girls' experiences in math classrooms. And so trying to go the other way and trying to be humanizing means that you're changing what you might typically do in a math class to be able to allow these students to come authentically to the conversations, to be able to engage in these critical thinking activities, and to be able to showcase their ways of knowing that often aren't valued in some of the typical ways that we think about math instruction.
So the other thing that I'll add is my book is in print right now, y'all. So the last chapter is called A Talk to Teachers Who Are Ready to Go for Broke. So basically that chapter is speaking to math teachers who are like, I'm getting ready to throw out all manner of excuses and I really want to do this. So I provide like guidelines and actual like examples of what a teacher who is ready to go for broke for Black girls, what you can actually do. So part of that is you got to do internal work, first of all. Like, it does seem easy to just answer the question, but if you don't think that Black girls are capable, or if you think that Black girls are so fast and thinking about boys and, they ain't focused in math, and that's what you think without interrogating those things, then doing something as simple as answering a question is a challenge, right? And so part of that chapter says that the teacher, the instructor, has to do the work of interrogating themselves, their privilege, but also the larger ideologies, the gendered and racialized stereotypes. So essentially, you have to know a little bit about Black girlhood. And in today's world, it ain't that hard to find some information about that, right? And so, I'm not asking math teachers to be all super deep about it, but I am asking math teachers to know a little something about Black girlhood and Black girls' experiences, largely in US public schools and in math classes. And there's a lot out there that they could learn, right? And so it seems real simple, but again, if you have internalized the stereotypes about Black girls, doing something like building a relationship, again, seems like a lot of hard work to do. But I tell people all the time, you can't decide Sunday, you want to be in the struggle and you want to support Black girls, but then on Friday, you're over it. Like if you're going to do it, you have to be committed 100%, right? And so, in that chapter, so I'm hoping you guys will buy the book when it comes out. It's a really poignant chapter. I mean, I like no holds bar. I go in, but the other thing is that I do believe in teachers. And I believe that teachers can do this if they want to do the hard work, right? And I've been in a racialized body all my life. And I will tell you that I consistently interrogate my own privilege, my positionality, because just because I'm Black don't mean that all of the Black students that I engage with are similar. That's essentializing, right? Mariah has a very powerful experience of when she first started teaching and folks was like, oh my God, you're gonna be a great model and all that kind of stuff. And when she went to her first school in Mississippi, Mariah, I should let you say it, but it's so good. Go ahead, Mariah, just share it.
So to expand on that. So yes, when I like I told you all before, I came from an independent white high school, private college, and went to teach in Okolona, Mississippi, which is very rural. I don't know if anyone knows of it. It's about 15 miles outside of Tupelo. The closest Walmart, McDonald's is like 15 miles away. So very out there. But as I was beginning to teach, everyone would say, you're going to be such a good role model. These kids need you. You are a Black woman that, just graduated from college, whoop de whoop. And so I believed that, I was going to be the savior for these kids and going to be able to have this instant connection with them based on us, all being Black folks in this classroom. But I didn't realize or investigate or interrogate, the internalized whiteness and internalized anti-Blackness that I had experienced in my own schooling career, and that now I was regurgitating and perpetuating in my own classroom. And I talk about this as something that is central for my work in thinking about teacher candidates and thinking about teacher education programs, because I was assumed to be able to connect easily with Black kids. No one ever questioned, what are your practices? What does your pedagogy look like? What are your beliefs about, one, what school is supposed to be, what it could be, and your expectations for students, especially in a town that you have these preconceived notions about. And so I talk about this as something that often gets overlooked, especially for teachers of color. And so that was my experience in really having to unlearn so much of this internalized white supremacy and internalized ways of being and knowing, especially in the schooling context.
I'll just give Mariah a plug. She's got a whole dissertation she won a Spencer, she won a Ford, same year, for her work around how do we change teacher education to better support Black women, because there is such a focus on trying to get, white folks to understand, like, how do you do this, that Black women are often like left out of the conversation. So y'all look out for Mariah's work. It's not math specific, but it is still, very good work, because Spencer and Ford ain't gonna give you no money if your stuff ain't fire.
Wonderful. And building on that, all of that, as a white teacher, I'm not owed the benefit of the doubt or the trust of Black girls in my classroom. I have to do overt things. If I sort of am silent on these issues, it's reasonable to assume that I'm not safe. And so just sort of like I have to act. But let's see, we have two questions that I see from Kaga, Dr. Soiree, and Marianne Dingle. And I think, yeah, great. We have time for two questions at least.
All right, first of all, thank you so much to Dr. Joseph and Dr. Harmon. I am going to call that into existence. Thank you both for just this amazing work you guys are doing. Here at Cal State Long Beach, just within the past week, I've had two conversations with two Black females, and dealing with those microaggressions and just so many of the things that you guys have mentioned. So it continues, as we all know, at university level. So thank you so much. One other thing that I had a question on, though, was you mentioned that for the girls in your study, finance was kind of the one place that they saw math as being applicable. And they also had this desire to get away from the worksheet-based mathematics. Did you see any, did they have any insight or any thoughts as far as how math could be applied outside of worksheets, outside of finance, perhaps in a culturally relevant way? And if they didn't have those ideas, do you guys have, maybe as a follow-up, have the idea to maybe introduce them to those avenues?
Go ahead, future Dr. Harmon. You can start and I'll add.
Not that much of the data that we get into, what did they want to see? But they did talk about, from the personal finance of, well, I work as a cashier, I count my money this way, this is where I see it as valuable. And so something that I know with Dr. Joseph's new partnership, we were speaking about this last week, of some ways to now move away from just the worksheet work in the math classrooms, but really trying to make it relevant. We talked about and thinking about starting your own business. So the example came up of starting an online boutique. And so what does that mean for now engaging kind of these STEM practices, engaging math? So it's not just, let me count my money that's coming in, let me count money that's going out, But now what does that look like for trying to program my site? What am I thinking about my viewer traffic and thinking about those numbers? What can that look like as I'm trying to grow that? And thinking about these different pieces of like, what does it mean to run a boutique, something that you really want to do? But math isn't just the transaction of number, but it's all of these different things. And so really trying to bring this math instruction to their interest is something that I know Dr. Joseph is thinking about, and I'll pass over to her about, additional things about this study as well.
Yeah, they were, I think that we did learn, some of them talked a lot about wanting to have more hands-on, wanting to have more field trips. So one girl said, man, I really enjoyed it when we went outside and my teacher actually had something set up where we were outside of the classroom and we were still learning math. I don't know if it was slow, but I can't remember exactly what it was. But they identified games, puzzles, just more hands-on work besides getting a worksheet, which essentially is usually a repeat of what the teacher has already done, more problems, but no discussion. And they also want to talk. Like they want to talk about their math to their friends and, the other kids, in the classroom. And we all know there's like a whole body of literature on like discourse. I teach a whole class called Discourse in Mathematics Classrooms. And how language, y'all know this, language, whether that be symbols, words, drawings, whatever, is very powerful in understanding mathematical ideas. And they just didn't get that, but they want that. So yeah, there were definitely some clear things that they talked about.
So Marian's question in the chat, she's having internet issues, was there anything that surprised you in your research findings?
This is sad, but no. Because of what I know about, first of all, just the way that we teach mathematics, really just period, but also what I know about what I've learned from Black girls, just about the focus on their behavior, on what they are wearing, the constant comparison to white femininity. So, white girls are often described in the literature as like compliant and quiet. And so it didn't really surprise me that they were having these types of experiences, because that's just what happens when you don't believe in, African-American children broadly in their math ability, or when you're just holding stereotypes so tight to your chest that, nothing can sort of get through. And so, no, I didn't really find anything that was surprising. But what is important from my perspective is that researchers don't really center Black girls' experiences. And so this is why I feel like we need more and more research. If I could like triple myself, clone myself, I would be doing all types of studies. For example, I really want to sit in like a math class, like maybe an algebra class or whatever, and I want to learn how Black girls are actually engaging with those mathematical ideas. So I do want to get down to like actual math ideas. I want to work with Black girls to talk to them about more about like, what do you want to learn? What do you think is important? Like, how do you see math as relevant to your life? Like we have small empirical qualitative studies. So just as a plug, I just got a new grant where I am going to be co-designing a instrument, basically a measure of math identity. And these 8 to 13-year-old girls are going to help me design that, because I've been seeing these things in these smaller studies, empirical, but now I want to test it on a larger sample to see is this just, you know, my little stuff, or is this really happening on a larger scale, right? Because I'm trying to get to that policy table. And what I know is that policymakers care about larger scale types of studies. The more I can do this, I think the more I can infiltrate that conversation when I'm bringing empirical work and data on a larger scale, that things need to change, right? So, you know, this is my life's work. I will be doing this until Jesus calls me home. And this is work that I'm super passionate about, that I love doing. I am a co-thinker. I'm always interested in learning more, learning from other people that have ideas. But this is work that has to be done because, again, no one really cares. No one really asks Black girls about their math learning. It just doesn't happen. And so, you know, I want to invite all y'all, you know, if you want to work on a project with Black girls, let's do it. Now, there's some things that we got to make sure that we do in terms of being researchers with Black girls, so that we're not perpetuating unconsciously further inequalities through the research process. But I've been put a call out in 2017, we need more work.
Wonderful. So we usually end with a very brief announcement of what's coming. We have one more talk this spring by Balaamlay Salaam. She's a graduate student at the University of Georgia. And a slight connection to today's presentation is that part of her critique of the way we study students' thinking is we often look at just the minimal stuff that gets written down. And she has a really interesting novel strategy for getting a lot richer data about students' thinking by asking them to write and speak in a certain kind of way as they're going. So I think it's gonna be really cool, a really cool connection there. And she's awesome. So everyone should come back next week. For that, I'm hopeful that we'll have maybe a couple of special Talk Math with your friends sessions over the summer that will also be exciting. So look for us on Twitter. And before we clap, can you tell us the name and location of your upcoming book, Dr. Joseph, so we can all be sure to look out for it?
Hopefully it's in the fall catalog. It's called Making Black Girls Count in Mathematics Education, a Black Feminist Vision of Transformative Teaching, with Harvard Ed Press. So they told me that it should be in the fall catalog. Of course, y'all know I'll put it on social media when it is available. It took a lot out of me. It's a labor of love, but I'm excited about the project. Brian, thank you so much, Dr. Katz. Thank you.
Join me in thanking our wonderful presenters for today. Excellent.